Almost everyone, especially if you are someone who takes a special interest in history or airplanes, knows who the Wright brothers are. If you don't know who they are, they're some of the most well-known aircraft designers in history. Even so, they failed numerous times before they eventually succeeded. They weren't the only ones who tried and failed, though. Specifically, during the 1950s and 60s, people tried time and time again to reinvent the airplane but mostly failed. Let's see some of the biggest failures of airplane history. 1. The Fisher P75 Eagle. When this plane was being thought up, everyone had very high hopes for it. The plane was made as a symbol of victory, and the 75 was driven from the Great War weapon, the French 75mm gun. The Eagle is a symbol of America, as its mascot is the bald eagle. This aircraft took multiple parts from different planes and combined them to make this one. Unfortunately, it did not perform as well as people had hoped, and it ended up being a big letdown. 2. The Douglas DC-10. With 55 accidents resulting in many deaths, this is arguably one of the worst planes ever created. The problem with this plane was that the doors open outward, not inward, which made it difficult if not impossible to properly close. During a flight in 1972 the door opened mid-air, and this happened again in 1974. In 1979, a wing fell off of this plane during takeoff. Luckily, many changes have been made to ensure this plane would be safer. 3. The Bell M1Arakuda. In 1937 the Arakuda was introduced, and it was anticipated to be great due to its innovative design and features. One of its positive aspects was where it placed engines and guns, because it made it quite easy to be used as a fighter jet. Unfortunately, this plane overheated quickly and had a poor design for a gunner to escape from. In addition, firing a gun from inside of the plane caused the entire interior to be filled with smoke. 4. The Vought F7U Cutlass. The Cutlass became well known for its unique design, as it was not built with a regular tail and had a non-traditional wing design. Despite its cool design, the plane came with a plethora of problems. Though the plane could reach high speeds, it couldn't reach high altitudes or remain in the air for long periods of time. Not only this, but the plane barely had enough strength to successfully complete the takeoff. In fact, nearly 25% of the time, the plane crashed. 5. The Conveyor NB36. A nuclear reactor is used in order to start a nuclear chain reaction, which is exactly why it should only be used in controlled places like nuclear power plants. Despite the dangers, in the 50s, it was added onto an airplane. The result was an airplane that was so dangerous and risky that another plane had to follow its tracks every time it flew, which was only 47 times. 6. The Pzl M15 Belfor. The Pzl M15 Belfor, which was created in Poland, was the first ever biplane. This plane was created in 1972 and was initially made to serve as a crop duster. The plane was made with jet power, which turned out to be much more expensive than anyone had anticipated. 7. The Wright Flyer. The Smithsonian says this about the Wright Flyer: the first powered, heavier-than-air machine to achieve controlled, sustained flight with a pilot aboard. In addition, it was unable to last even 1 minute in the air and was extremely difficult to navigate. On the 17th of December in 1903, this plane attempted to fly 4 times, but that was it. 8. The Harrier Jump Jet. Taking inspiration from the British Navy, the Soviet Union made a plane which they called Yakovlev Yak-38. Unfortunately, the Soviet version of the British plane didn't live up to its standards. When it was hot outside, the plane could only stay airborne for 15 minutes. In better weather, the aircraft could still only fly about 800 miles when it did not even have any weapons on board. 9. The Lockheed Martin VH-71. Honestly, this plane had a pretty good design on paper. Augusta Westland and Lockheed Martin started to market this plane in the United States in 2002. This plane seemed to be so amazing that the Marine Corps even suggested it be used to transport the president. Unfortunately, The price point moved from $6.1 billion to $11.2 billion just a few years later, which was not realistic. 10. The Bristol 188. No matter what you're selling or doing, it's always important that you are, at minimum, on par with your competition. When Chuck Yeager invented the Bell X1 in 1947, it prompted other people to try and create a plane similar to it. The British had their version which they called the Bristol 188, but there were many imperfections with the plane. Not only did the fuel tank leak during flights, but the plane could not take off until it reached a ground speed of 300 miles per hour. 11. The Grumman X-29. The U.S. Air Force obtained the Grumman X-29 between the 1980s and 90s. Its forward-facing wings were designed to give it better aerodynamics and a sleeker look, but actually, it just made it astronomically impossible to fly properly. Despite the fact that it was designed by the Air Force, NASA, Grumman, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, it still had many major flaws. A NASA employee stated, "It was unflyable, literally, without the digital flight computer on board, which made corrections to the flight path 40 times a second." 12. The Rockwell XFV12. Designing the first type of airplanes must have been a difficult concept to bear, but by the 1970s, you'd think the design would be strong enough to ensure that one of the top airline companies wouldn't mess up so badly. However, when the Rockwell XFV12 was invented, that proved the thought to be incorrect. It had a unique design and interesting features, though it never took off for flight. 13. The Nova Plano. Caproni, an Italian plane maker, created this giant aircraft in the 1920s. Its original intention was to carry 100 passengers across the Atlantic Ocean, but it never even made it out of the country. This hideous plane featured 8 engines and 9 wings, which sounds like a complete and total disaster in itself.